Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, we take a look at the potential Dodgers lineup. We look at if the Padres have closed the gap in the NL West, and we look back at a trade that happened a few years ago that has a couple players still going. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. We are here every Monday through Friday for you, free and available where we get podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. And if you never want to miss a day, because you know we're not going to, you can subscribe and get it sent directly to you and have it ready for you every weekday morning. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio, and I'm usually here with the co-host, Jeff Snider. But just been holding down the fort for me the last few days, and wanted to repay him and give him a night off and be here. But we're both lifelong Dodger fans that cover the team currently, have covered the team for a few years, been in the press box, been in the locker room, and continue to bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Not a lot of news went on. But before I get into all that, just want to, again, thank Jeff for holding down the fort the last few days. Um, we Locked On Dodgers. We lost our biggest fan in Mexico. My grandfather, my tata, he passed away last week, and I've been out dealing with that. Had to head to Mexico, you know, handling all that, and yeah. So if anyone wants to become our new biggest fan in Mexico and our new biggest supporter in terms of word of mouth promotion, you are more than welcome to step up and carry that torch. As unfortunately, but that won't be happening anymore. You know, Obviously, we wouldn't all of us wouldn't be here without our grandparents. But I definitely don't think I would be right here talking to you on a podcast about the Dodgers without my thought that he was a big baseball fan, big Dodger fan, and I think my favorite part of the later years of or the last few years, my life has, or ever since I've really been an adult, has been able to take him to Dodger games, being able to invite him, been able to buy tickets, take him, whatever. Uh, he lived in Snada, but he would come up pretty often to see us, or to deal with other things that he had to take care of, or his doctor's appointments or whatever. So anytime we come up, we try to go to a game. And yeah, I think we've talked about baseball and family and a lot of that stuff on the podcast before, and that's a big part of it. And you can't really get to certain points in life without having that influence in there. And he's definitely had that influence. Now, luckily for me, my whole family is a baseball family, but on one side of things, on my mom's side of things, they're a baseball family because of him and because of everything else that he brought down and he brought to it. And so I always appreciated that. I always appreciated him. And like I said, he was definitely one of my biggest fans, biggest supporters, always telling people all over town over there in Ensenada about, his grandson who had a podcast, talk about the Dodgers, or, cover the Dodgers, whatever the case is. So it's been as probably everyone knows, it's tough to go through it. It was unexpected. It was sudden. So that made it a little bit more difficult, but I'm hanging on. I'm here. And appreciate. I know I put out a tweet a few days ago, and I'm sure some of the people that replied are listeners. So I appreciate you guys for that. I haven't got back to those people yet that replied, but I appreciate it. And we're gonna continue moving forward and be here and talk about the Dodgers, because he's still listening. It's just in a different location now. So. But in Dodgerland, no news. One news of, I guess, a potential Dodger player, Gene Segura. He signed with the Marlins, so He's now officially off the board. The Dodgers were never linked to him. The only really link we had to him was in the episode where Jeff and I drafted players that are free agents that we think the Dodgers should sign. He was one of those players. He would have fit a role there at second base, but we don't know what the Dodgers are currently thinking. We don't know what the thought process is in terms of how they're handling moving forward, especially after the Trevor Bauer news, and that decision still has to come. And realistically, whatever the outcome is of him actually playing for the team or not, the money's still going to be an issue with either. I doubt they find a trade partner that will take on the money. So money wise, they're going to be up against that threshold, and I don't really see there being an opportunity to cut more money. So at this point, I would imagine they would not mind taking on more, since they're going to have to cross over into past that 233 million mark anyways. But that remains to be seen. Dodgers haven't really been linked to anyone else that's available right now or out there on the market, so it's been kind of a slow front. But as we know, as we've seen in the past, Andrew Friedman worked quietly, and maybe we'll be surprised one of these days by one of the moves he makes. But if not, that's what we're kind of here to get into today. Jeff did a "What if the season started today" type of thing, and for me, it's one of those where if the season started today, there's a lot of question marks in terms of the starting lineup. The starting rotation is fairly set. You can set a rotation right now of who you think would be it, and you could definitely set a bullpen of who you think is going to make the bullpen. But the lineup, I think, is kind of the biggest question in terms of, first of all, who's going to play where, and second of all, how that lineup's going to fit. This kind of stems a little bit from a question I saw, I believe, on the Athletic. Fabian Ardaya had a Dodgers mailbag, and one of the questions was about the Dodgers offense. And basically, he says the question basically said, will the Dodgers still make the playoffs? He doesn't believe that the lineup can score enough runs. And he said, there's also no hitter that strikes fear into the heart of the opponent. Now, this is one of those where subjective. Do I care if a player in my lineup strikes fear into the opponent? If it doesn't, that's not going to do anything. That doesn't do anything. You might be more aware of a player like that and maybe pitch around him, and that might contribute to some extra runs or some extra things. But I don't think striking fear is a necessary thing to have a successful offense. Plus, I guess these feelings that he has might be based, I don't know, on something. But I would imagine Mookie Betts, who's been an MVP candidate pretty much every year since he's been with the Dodgers, Freddie Freeman, who won MVP over Mookie Betts in 2020 and has been one of the best hitters in baseball the last couple of years. I don't know what quantifies striking fear into an opponent, but I would imagine no pitcher really wants to face Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman. So I reject the premise in that sense as well. But the lineup, yeah. Does the lineup strike fear into the opponent, which, also, like I said, doesn't matter, but is something that to take a look at, especially with, not knowing and having some holes potentially. So that's what we're going to talk about after we talk about BetOnline, because this episode is brought to you by BetOnline, who is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball. They've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, they got those there as well. So head to betonline.net on your laptop or mobile device to learn more and get all your betting info, because they're the fastest and easiest way to get all your betting information. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we have returned, and yeah, taking a look at the lineup. Now, you go around and you start at catcher. You know you were gonna have Will Smith at catcher. You know Freddie Freeman's gonna be at first base. You know Mookie Betts is gonna be in right field. And honestly, at this point, those are the only for sure's in terms of position. And on opening day, Freddie Freeman's gonna be at first, Mookie Betts gonna be right, Will Smith is gonna be at catcher. But beyond that, we're not entirely sure of, you know, what they're bringing. And it's a matter of, so let's build it. You look at second base, and second base, you would think Gavin Lux, but Gavin Lux, in this sense, is going to be our shortstop. So you look at second base, and you look at Max Muncy, and Max Muncy, yeah, could play second base, but you also have third base open. And so Max Muncy's probably going to play third base because realistically, Miguel Vargas probably is not going to play third base. So they're going to have him in left field. So now you're building it out that way. So now you got Miguel Vargas in left field, Max Muncy at third base, Gavin Lux at shortstop. Now, who you got in center field? Now, your choices as of now are James Outman, Chris Taylor, Trace Thompson. Now, realistically, yeah, Chris Taylor's might be the best defensive of those three, at least in terms of what we've seen. Trace is no slouch, and James Outman can handle it. But we've seen Chris Taylor play major league outfield for a few years now. But if you play Chris Taylor in center field, then you're handicapping yourself in the infield a little bit. So let's just say you got James Outman and or Trace Thompson in center field. That's putting Chris Taylor at second base. Now, who else is there for second base? Well, at this point on the 40-man roster, the really only other one you can see playing second base is Michael Busch. So all that being said, that's your infield. And then at DH, you got JD Martinez. Now, the addition of JD Martinez, it was big for the lineup because it was really hard building out that top four of the lineup. Last year was easy. It was Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith. Like that was the top four. And pretty much every game last season, that was the top four. Now this year, you still have three of those top four, but it's filling that second spot or however you want to move it around. That's the toughest. Now before you know, you could have leaned to Mookie Betts, maybe Gavin Lux in the two hole, then Freddie Freeman and Will Smith. You could have went, stronger at the top with Mookie Betts, followed by Freddie Freeman, followed by Will Smith, and then maybe Max Muncy, and then kind of go from there. Adding JT Martinez does lengthen the lineup a little bit. So now, I mean, you could, in theory, go a few ways. You could go, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, JD Martinez, Will Smith. You could go Mookie Betts, JD Martinez, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith. I don't know if that's why I said it. You go Mookie Betts, JD Martinez, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith. That's possible. Now they still might trust Gavin Lux enough to go Gavin Lux in that two hole. Maybe JD Martinez in the four hole, and then you push Will Smith back to the five hole. That's possible. But your top five probably in some capacity are going to be Betts, Lux, Freeman, Martinez, Smith. I would imagine at this point, I would imagine. Now, the rest of your lineup fills up from there with Max Muncy, Miguel Vargas, and then likely Chris Taylor if he's going to be playing second base right now, and then Trace Thompson and James Outman. Now, is that the same lineup we had last season? No, it's not. But it's still a pretty solid lineup because, it's Major League Baseball. No more than a handful of teams and maybe less than a handful of teams have a lineup that's okay, strong 1 through 9. Maybe no team has a legitimate 1 through 9. Even the Astros last season, they were starting Martin Maldonado a lot at catcher. And yeah, well, he can do things. He's not a good hitter. So it's very rare that you're going to find any lineup strong 1 through 9. But for the Dodgers, Betts, Lux, Freeman, Martinez, Smith. That's a quality top five of a lineup. It's definitely, top 10 in baseball. You lengthen a little bit to add the Max Muncy, and 1 through 6, you're still right there, probably top 10 in baseball. After that is where, it gets a little fishy. But if you're good 1 through 6, you're better than, pretty much 70% of the league in terms of lineup production. And, this is accounting for Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman being what they are. It's accounting for JD Martinez even being what he was last year. If he was what he was last year, that's still a really good player and productive hitter. That's based on Will Smith doing what he did last year. And that's all you can really count on. What you're counting on this year is for Max Muncy to bounce back the entire season. Max Muncy struggled a lot at the start of the year, made a couple adjustments, and had a pretty strong end to the season. I'm counting on him to kind of have it figured out the entire year. You're counting on Miguel Vargas panning out as a prospect and as a hitter. You're counting on, at this point, Chris Taylor rectifying any issues and swing power problems he had last season. And then you're just hoping to get what you can out of James Outman and Trace Thompson, and you're hoping that their defense is strong enough to where the offense doesn't have to be amazing. And from what we saw, Trace Thompson, I definitely think once we got to the postseason, he was outmatched. But over the course of a regular season, Trace Thompson can hold his own, and if the rest of the lineup clicks, you don't really need Trace Thompson to be anyone more than just a guy that can occasionally run into one. So it works out. But does that lineup, is that a lineup that you could be comfortable with? And it is. And I do think, like I said, the addition of JD Martinez really adds to it, because it was really hard to kind of look and see, like, where is this lineup going to do? How can we, trust that? Is it a drop off after 5? Is it a drop off after 4? Is it, and that's expecting Gavin Lux in the top half of the lineup, when last year, he had most of his success coming out of the ninth spot and coming out of the bottom half of the lineup. It's one of those where you're hoping he's taking that next step, and he is able to handle the top half of the lineup. So yeah, as of now, there's still a lot of question marks on the offense. There's still a lot of question marks in terms of the starting and everyday lineup. I would imagine that Chris Taylor is not going to be an everyday second baseman. I would imagine at this point, the way things are, Michael Busch will get some run and, maybe be the second baseman against right-handed pitching as of now, which, allows Chris Taylor to kind of move around. But and then maybe not, because if you got Vargas and left, and we know Vargas is going to get a big runway and be able to show it off what he can do. If he's in left, and then you got Max Muncy for sure at third base, you got Gavin Lux for sure at shortstop, you got, like I said, Mookie, Freddie, Will Smith solidified. And if it's a matter of, Chris Taylor playing second base or center field, I guess it's one of those where they're probably just going to run it out there and basically mix and match center and second between Bush, Taylor at second, and then Outman, Taylor, Trace in the center, and kind of see who works out and maybe go from there. Let's just say Michael Busch gets off to is your primary second baseman, or at least your second baseman more often than not, and he has a really good season or a really good start to the season, but James Outman and Trace Thompson don't. Well, maybe, but Chris Taylor does. Okay, now Chris Taylor can play center, and the other two can, come in when needed, and then that'll move Chris Taylor around when needed. I think, like I said, right now there's question marks. There's definitely enough players to cover the empty holes, but it's just a matter of what kind of production you're going to get out of them. And, as far as it comes down to one hitter, or a hitter that strikes fear, you still got Mookie, you still got Freddie. No pitcher wants to face those guys. You drop it down maybe one tier, 2 tiers. Nobody wants to face Will Smith. Nobody really wants to face JD Martinez if they don't have to. So there's some fear striking there. And, is this a juggernaut? Oh my God, all-star lineup? I mean, technically still is. JD Martinez was an all-star last year. So it's going to be different. But I do think, like I said, if Miguel Vargas pans out to even be in a slightly above average hitter, then that, your lineup is 7 deep now. And I'll take a lineup that's 7 deep. So is the offense going to score enough runs? The offense is going to score enough runs. Is they going to score enough runs every single night? Not every single night, but that's normal. Are they going to, the biggest question is once we get to October, and that's always going to be the question. And like I've said before, the Dodgers could have a legitimate all-star lineup, like 9 all-stars. The best 9 players in baseball could be the Dodgers lineup right now, and I wouldn't feel comfortable going into October. So that's just the nature of the beast. So with that being said, how the Padres closed the gap on the Dodgers, And we take a look at a little bit, we take a look back at a trade that happened a few years ago. A couple of those guys still kicking on those teams, so we'll remember that trade. Um, but just a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends, putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. But now you live nearby, you can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds that you get pulled over, anyways? And even if you get pulled over, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car. What if you kill someone? Everyone knows about the risk of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. That's why police officers are out right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, let's finish up. So, another part of that question in that mailbag on the Athletic was: if the Dodgers roster stays as it is right now, are they still the National League West favorites? Seems like there's a strong argument to be made that the Padres roster is now notably better than the Dodgers, especially with Tatis coming back and the Dodgers pitching staff highly questionable. And again, I mean, we've talked about this before, and have the Padres closed the gap? Yeah, the Dodgers and Padres will be battling for the NL West title in 2023. Some people may think the Padres already closed the gap just based on the fact of them beating the Dodgers in the postseason. But, I don't think that is indicative of closing the gap. I do think that, the lineup and or the team they have right now is why that gap is closed. And, you look at their lineup and they'll have Austin Nola at catcher, they'll have Cronenworth at first, Kim at second, Bogarts at short, Machado at third, and then they'll have Grisham in center, Juan Soto in right. But as of now, I mean, they don't legitimately have a left fielder. And as of now, it looks like their DH is Matt Carpenter. So, you know, their lineup and their opening day roster is still lacking a little bit there, but you're counting on Matt Carpenter replicating the success he had with the Yankees last year in a short time. You don't really have a for sure left fielder, and the rest of their lineup, you don't need that. It's similar to like the Dodgers, where at this point, center field, you're hoping for strong defense, and then any offense is gravy. That would probably be what the Padres are thinking, where, left field. Oh, wait, sorry. I completely forgot about Fernando Tatis. So Fernando Tatis will be in the outfield. So yeah, their lineup is strong. No doubt about it. Their lineup as of now is a better lineup than the Dodgers in terms of star power, in terms of length, in terms of, for sure success. Yeah, their lineup is better, probably 1 through 8, and that's not a problem. You look at their rotation, and they're gonna have you Darvish and um, Joe Musgrove and Blake Snell, and then after that, though, they're gonna have to figure it out. They did sign Seth Lugo apparently to start, so he'll be in that mix, and then they're still gonna have to figure out what else they want to do there. And then bullpen wise, they got Josh Hader, and they got the guys that they signed, Suarez, and forgetting the other guy's name. Sorry, Suarez and Nick Martinez. So, and they still have some of the other guys that they had last season. I do think the Padres. I know we said this before. Their top tier is better than the Dodgers' top tier in terms of Bogarts, Tatis, Machado are assuming they and Soto, assuming they're healthy and Tatis gets back to how he was before, those top four players are better than the Dodgers' top four players in terms of in the lineup. But after that, I mean, it's not a for sure. Kim had a solid season last year. That doesn't guarantee he's gonna, have the same one. Jake Cronenworth's a pretty solid player, but even then, he struggled the last few years, and he continues to be clutching, especially against the Dodgers. It seems like, but he hasn't been, oh my god, a world beater over there. He was an All Star, I believe, last season, but so was JD Martinez, and people think JD Martinez is washed, so it can go either way. Um, yeah, but it's a matter of there are going to be a lot of people that believe the Padres are the better team overall, or they're going to win the NL West, and that's fine. I do think, like I said, that the bridge is there's no bridge. I do think they're. I don't know if they're on completely equal footing, but it's equal enough, and it's one of those where on this side you have the Padres very top heavy, not so much depth. So they're weighing this much, but it's this much of top heavy. If you're watching, it's like 75% top heavy, 25% uh, the rest of the team in the lineup. Whereas the Dodgers, I think the Dodgers are still the better team 1 through 26. But I do think that 1 through 26 is just that weight is distributed more evenly. After Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and maybe Will Smith, that weight's distributed pretty evenly the rest of the way. And even in the pitching side, you have Julio Diaz, who will be a Cy Young candidate. You have Kershaw, who, if he throws enough innings, would also be a Cy Young candidate. And then you kind of have guys you're counting on. But the Dodgers can run out at this point probably 8 guys that could be at least a number 5 starter. And not knowing the Padres, not knowing all these names on the Padres 40-man roster, I don't think the Padres can go 8 deep in terms of guys that can start, but they do have a lot of good arms. So, yeah, what I think is that it's going to be a battle for the NL West, where the Padres are relying on star power to carry them, and the Dodgers are relying on depth. And we're going to see what ends up winning out, because the star power in theory will win out, but that's also counting on everything going right around them. Whereas the Dodgers have a little bit more, they can, not everything has to go right for them to be successful, but they are a lot closer to that than they have been in years past. They need Miguel Vargas to work out. They need Gavin Lux to, work out to a certain extent. They need more of this stuff to happen. And you're counting a little bit more on unknowns than in the past. So that's what we're at there. Real quick, yesterday was Austin Barnes' birthday, and that reminded me of around this time was the infamous or famous Dee Gordon trade, depending how you feel about it. And the full trade was Dee Gordon, Dan Herron, Miguel Rojas to the Marlins, and cash to the Marlins for Austin Barnes, Chris Hatcher, Andrew Heaney, and Kike Hernandez. Andrew Heaney then being flipped for Howie Kendrick right away. So, how did that trade work out? We already know, in the short term, a lot of Dodger fans were mad because Dee Gordon ended up having a really good year in 2015 for the Marlins. He led the league in batting average. He led the league in hits. He led the league in stolen bases. He was an all-star, gold glove, silver slugger, got some MVP votes. But I think people take that season and put it to the rest of his career, and in terms of evaluating that trade. And after that season, Dee Gordon hit 268 the next year with the OPS plus of 77. So, 23% worse than the rest of the league, and was also suspended that season for a positive drug test for PEDs. And while he said he didn't do anything, he didn't do anything knowingly, but that still happened. After that, yeah, he did hit 300 again, but his OPS plus was 97. So he was, a lot of singles, a lot of, not empty hits, but he was not even a league average hitter. After that, he went on to play with the Mariners and was, never got an OPS above 80 after that. So I think if you remove that first season, where I don't think you can't say for sure that would happen with the Dodgers anyways. Uh, the Dodgers, come ahead out on that trade, just knowing for the fact of what happened with Kiki Hernandez, what happened with Austin Barnes. We had the 1 year of Howie Kendrick. Chris Hatcher never really quite worked out and panned out to what they maybe thought he could be, but you look at it. But you also look at Miguel Rojas ended up being a pretty solid role player for the Marlins. He's still there. He's kind of become, a figure there. Maybe not quite Justin Turner, like just in the sense that the Marlins haven't really had success, but he's kind of become a beloved player over there. And while he's never really been, he's always been glove first kind of guy, and he's only really had, other than 2020, where he had an OPS plus of 138. He's only been an above league average hitter once since 2015. But he's been able to provide them some solid work and always that glove work. So yeah, looking back at the trade, Miguel Rojas, I think if you go combine WAR from everyone on that trade in terms of like their initial deals, I think Miguel Rojas closed the gap a little bit more, especially with Dee Gordon having that one strong year. But the years of Kiki Hernandez, the clutch moments that he brought. I mean, you have standout moments from Kiki that you think about. The tying home run in Game 7 of the NLCS, the 3 home runs in the clinching game to go to the World Series in 2017. I mean, you have a lot more moments from Kike. Austin Barnes has been a solid backup for a while now, and even he has some moments, getting that base hit to knock Blake Snell out of the game in Game 6 of the 2020 World Series and things of that nature. And then Andrew Heaney ended up becoming a Dodger last year anyway, so kind of all worked out. So that's all for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Check out Locked On Sports today with the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, with instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports today available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts, which is also where we're available if you search for Locked On Dodgers on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. You can also find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vince Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Tell your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.